So it's January 12th. I'm going to give you a quick walking tour of the farm and tell you my plans so far. So this farm, the property is located in Williamson County, Tennessee, which is both good and bad. It's good because property holds its value really well here, but it's bad because so many people want to move here. It's become extremely expensive. It's one of the most expensive counties in the state. And if I didn't have the opportunity to buy from Danny, I would have bought elsewhere. So when you're building, there's really two tracks. There's the physical tract, which is finding the right contractors, getting the actual physical work done. And then there's the paper trail, right? And that means getting all the right permits. Fortunately, because I make a living as a lawyer, I'm pretty conversant in paperwork. And so what I have to do right now, I've submitted for my septic application, one for the barn and one for a prospective home site. I submitted September 15. As of yesterday, the county is on September 8. That means my application has sat on the desk of the Williamson County sewage disposal for 5 months. I cannot submit for my barn plans until I have my septic approval letter. So it's, you need a lot of patience to do this, I've learned, and I'm learning it, but patience is not my forte. So, okay, that's the paperwork part, is getting all the permits in place and having a lot of patience. The other thing that's really tricky, of course, is financing. It's been an interesting time to get rid of your W-2 status when you're figuring out how to finance construction. I've had to make good relationships with small banks, which is good and better probably than the big banks. But I've also learned that in Tennessee, if you own more than 14 acres and you can show that you generate more than $1,500 worth from that, whether it's hay, whatever it is, you can get what is called greenbelt status. You have to apply for it, you have to submit it to the county, but that will save some money. And then I also learned if you're a farm business, you can apply for a sales tax exemption on anything having to do with the farm. So when I bought my tractor, when I buy animal feed, seeds, fencing, anything like that, and it's a fairly detailed application, and since I'm not a working business right now, I had to basically submit a business plan. So all of that stuff helps. But it's definitely been interesting. I mean, just to put it in perspective of the expense here, you know how much this flag cost me? This is a water tap flag. That means it was $4,300. And that is just so that the utility provider will go to the water tap which runs along the road, put a tap in for me. That doesn't include plumbing or a pipe to make it go where I want to go. That's just to allow me access to the water line. $4,300. I mean, it's unbelievable. So the finance part's been tricky, well, just to figure out, it's a big learning curve here. The other thing too is figuring out the right people and figuring out this puzzle. I mean, the barn's got to come down. Where do the animals go? Where do the horses go? There's cows all over the property. How do I keep them from getting in the construction? I was hopeful that the fire department would be able to burn this as a practice burn and it would save some costs, but it's tricky because they're not able to do that until maybe earlier mid-April. And I have a greenhouse on order with the Mennonites up in Kentucky, a 30 by 84 foot greenhouse that's supposed to come at the end of February. And you obviously cannot have a greenhouse close to where there's going to be a huge burn because it would melt. So then I have to figure out, is it worth it to wait for the fire department? I'm thinking probably not. The other thing, the most important thing is finding the right people on your team. And interviewing contractors has been so interesting. I need someone to take the barn down. I need the pad built. I need the new barn to be built. And just the drama and the BS and the lack of basic manners has been so interesting. The amount of times I've been called darling, honey. I was told by one guy that I can't burn, that's illegal because of the EPA, which, a few days later I had the captain of the Williamson County Fire Department come out. And of course you can burn. It's a barn that was built in the 40s. There's no asbestos, it's tin and it's wood. I can't burn, that would be arson, but they can as long as they do all the paperwork. But people just being dishonest, when they come out and it's just me, and I'm sure they make assumptions about what I know or don't know. I've had someone come out to give me an estimate on demo and I didn't hear back from him. He was supposed to email me the estimate, and it was him and his cousin. And I followed up. I said, hey, I never got your estimate emailed to me. And he said, well, as soon as I left your property, my wife told me she's leaving me for the cousin. I mean, you're just talking stuff that, like, people that don't show up on time, which is really tricky because the days of PTO are over. Like, if I'm not working, I'm not making money. And it looks like I better get out of here. Big storm coming. But anyways, I hope you enjoy, you know, and I'll share more, but I realized I had never shared an actual walking tour of the farm. So, okay, so I've shared some of this before. Here's the orchard. I've been working on that. Here, right here is going to be where the garden, the cut flower garden, and the perennial garden will be. Now, I have on order, it's a huge puzzle. I have on order right now an 84 by 30 foot greenhouse from the Mennonites. And that's gonna come sometime in the spring. And it's been tricky because I wanted to have the barn burned for the reasons I explained, but I don't think the timing will work because the fire department can't come until April. And my greenhouse is set to be delivered at the end of February. So, you know, it really won't make sense for me to delay burning it, demoing it for 2 months so the fire department can do it, because I don't think the actual demo is going to be the expensive part. And the greenhouse is going to go probably right around here. So I'm thinking when this barn is demoed, this is going to be like a greenhouse area workspace. You know, the dream for the property is to be kind of this mail order perennial farm. Here's my buddies, and we're gonna do a quick peek in the barn. So, like Peggy explained in episode 2, this is a stock barn that was built in the 40s. You know, over time, the roof's been let go, and so a lot of water has done damage. And been doing a lot of clean out, believe it or not. In this area, there was 60 tires that I had to pull out, take to the dump. Jake loves the barn cats a little too much. So back here, I don't know if this was used for dairy or not, or just like a grain shed, but there's a loft. And I'm gonna save some of this wood that's not damaged from water. I'm gonna save some just for cosmetic purposes in the new barn, but unfortunately, you know, there's no really cool hand-hewn beams or anything like that. And, you know, a lot of water damage has warped stuff. But I'm gonna save what I can just for cosmetic purposes and for like to line walls and stuff, just for the nostalgia and because it was part of the original barn. So this is just a little shed part. We'll go back out. This is what it looks like. You know, everyone says, oh, save it, save the old barn. I mean, this is not salvageable. And as you can hear, it's windy today, and you can hear that tin blowing around pretty good. So I'll show you the inside. Hey guys. They think they're getting snacks, of course. Hello, Miss Blue, Mr. Snort. Just link this up. Okay. Hey, you sweet girl. Hey, you. Hey, you. All right, so, yeah. I mean, you can see some of this has like a cool patina on it, and I'm gonna try to save some just for decorative purposes. But structurally it's shot. Here's my wheelbarrow. This is where I dig out manure for the garden. And some of these stall doors are really cool that I want to save too. Maybe put them in the garden or in a house or in a barn someday. But yeah, I mean, this barn is in rough shape. So when the barn is demoed, of course, part of the puzzle is, where do these guys go? And I'll show you on our little walking tour. So my property line, see this like big elm down there? That's my south property line. And right here where this field crowns, that's where my septic is gonna go for the barn. And when the horses are moved, I'm gonna take all this fencing down and find someone who, you know, the person who takes the barn, the company that takes the barn down, you know, I need to have some dirt moved to grade and fix all of this drainage going on. And then, like I said in the beginning, this area will probably be a greenhouse. There's a pole barn I'll show you that I'm probably gonna move. But we'll see. What do you guys think? Are you excited to move? I think so. I think you'll be happy to have a nice dry barn. Okay, now we're entering to the back field. And make sure the cows don't get out. Okay. Okay, so now we're on the back side of the fence, and I'll give you a tour going this way. Here's the orchard that I've showed you. And this area right here is where I'm going to eventually put my greenhouse, the one that's coming from the Mennonites at the end of February. It's 84 by 30 feet, and it'll go right around here. I did have flags. I don't know what happened to them. But one other tricky part of the puzzle here is, you know, there's a lot of cows on the property, and Danny and the family used to have a cattle business that they ended up selling, and now a gentleman rents the farm to put the cows. And it's tricky because I have to figure out, how do I keep the cows away from construction? And believe it or not, this area is really cleaned up now. So the cattle guy used to have all these chutes and tube gates and panels and all sorts of stuff. And he just cleaned it out last week, which was a big help. I've got to get everything away from the barn before it gets demoed. So here you can see on the back side, there's just no way that this thing, unfortunately, can be saved. And when I was thinking about where to put the new barn, you know, I always thought, well, the new barn should go where the old barn is. That makes sense. And one thing I've learned is that it's really important to have people on your team who are not just yes folks. So I had a group come out from a construction company based in Spring Hill, and they walked the property and they said, gosh, you know, it's really low. You probably can't appreciate it from this video, but this is a very low elevation. And I would have to spend a ton of money bringing in fill to build it up to a spot where it made sense. Because I'm going to do a foundation and all of that stuff. It's not going to be a pole barn. So the idea is now, when this comes down, to have it graded, and I'm going to move one of the pole barns that I'll show you in a minute here, and this will be like kind of the greenhouse work area. So this is facing south, and then as we turn this way, just to the right of the sycamore is my east property line, and then everything this way is Jeff's, and then this way is mine. So Jeff is great, Danny's nephew, and we're gonna end up running a fence to keep the cows away from the construction. And so I have some calls out to fence companies, and I've got to see, you know, when they can do it. I'd love the fire department to be able to burn this, but if they can't get to it till April, I really can't wait that long when I have orders for the greenhouse coming in February. And the thing with the barn, the actual demo is probably not going to be the expensive part. It's really removing the demo and building the pad. So that's just how it goes sometimes. Timing has to be right. Okay, so here we're walking up the driveway. And down here, this is the opposite of where I just showed you. You know, the septic is on the other side of this fence. But here I have this nice pond. It's not spring fed. This is actually filled with runoff from the hill. And it hasn't been cleaned in some time. There's a lot of cattails. I've actually read that you can use pigs to help get cattails out. I don't know if I'll do that. I think I need an excavator first. You know, whoever I hire to help me take the barn down and build up the pad, I'm gonna have them try to level a lot of stuff here and fix out, you know, this water problem, because the runoff from the hill has eroded a lot of nice stuff here. And, you know, it's Tennessee, lots of limestone everywhere. It's not common for basements and swimming pools because there's so much darn stone. And you can see it all sticking out here. Okay, so the nice thing about the pond is that means I can get baby ducks. All right, so, yeah, so, gosh, I mean, the roof is pretty much, well, it's not pretty much, it's shot, and it's a windy day, so you can hear that. It's kind of scary, really. I was thinking about a piece flying off. Okay, so, and the nice thing too is, you know, I don't want to have a barn right on top of Danny's house. I'm not sure what Jeff and his family will do there, but it makes sense to build it a little further back. And as we get up here, the elevation starts to get a lot better. This here is some mineral thing for the cows. It's not mine, it's the cow guys. And look at that sycamore. Like, look how beautiful that limb is. It's just calling for a swing, isn't it? Definitely putting a swing up there. All right, so here's a pole barn. There's my tractor full of fencing that I've been working on taking down. And I think if it's not too expensive, I have to get estimates. I'm gonna move the pole barn from here down there next to the greenhouse so I can store my equipment and greenhouse supplies. And I think I'm going to build the barn here because it's a lot higher. You have a nice view. You know, the pond is out front. And, you know, there's some privacy between the barn and Danny's property, Danny's house. And it just makes a lot of sense because I'm not going to have to spend a ton of money bringing in fill to make the pad high enough. So I really appreciated the builders who said that. I was like, you know what, you guys are right. Okay, so now we're walking towards the west. There's my law office. If you follow me on Instagram, you know what I'm talking about, but I put this post up as a joke and a lot of people thought I was serious. I said, this is my new law office. But I actually got that for storage, so when I take wood out of the barn to save, I can put it in there so it's not exposed to the weather. So I'm wondering if you can bury this and make a storm cellar. That would be cool, you know, with tornadoes and everything here. Okay, so here's another pole barn that Danny and the family built. And I asked the guy, so there's hay obviously here in this left bay, and this hay belongs to the guy who has the cows. And I asked him to please move this hay into the right bay, and I think I'm gonna move the horses up here while in between that barn being demoed and the new barn being built. So, and I'll show you behind the barn where the horses are gonna get moved. I can't believe how beautiful today is. I actually was supposed to meet builders here to talk about cost, and I canceled because the forecast was for really aggressive thunderstorms. So I feel a little bit silly, but you know, it's just what happens with forecasts, I guess. Okay, so now facing west, and here's the pole barn that I just showed you. And I'd love to save at least part of it and paint it. You know, it's especially because the family built these. I want to try to hold on to them if I can. So this little area right here is actually fenced in on 3 sides. And I think what I'm going to do is, you know, run a fence from the corner of this barn across to that fence, put in a tube gate or 2, and just move the horses up here. I've got to figure out water and all that good stuff. But it should be a good spot, and that actually the shed where they would move into is a lot cleaner and drier than where they are now, because, you know, with half of the roof gone on their current barn, it's not a good situation. All right, so heading west a bit, and someday I'll build a house here. My architect has done a phenomenal job. I'm working with 906 Architect in Franklin. They did the barn plans and they did my custom home plans. But through here is where I think I'm going to build a house someday. And so here's the other septic field. Kind of see where that elevation goes up. And it's interesting, this is my first time doing all of this stuff. And so the way it works for septic in Tennessee is you have to have a soil guy, at least in Williamson County, you have to have a soil guy work with your surveyor. And the soil guy comes out, and he was in this area and he took a bunch of soil samples. Then he maps the samples, he gives it to the surveyor, and they come up with what they call a soil grid. And they figure out, like, you know, how many bedrooms you might be able to have based on that. And in a soil grid, there's about 30 stakes. So I've got 2 septic areas, this one here, and the one I showed you that's in front of the pond. And you know what they do is when they do the grid, they use these really flimsy wooden stakes that any livestock can easily knock over. And for a while in this field, this is when Danny started getting real sick in February. That's when they had come out. And there were cows all up in here. I couldn't get them out. And so at each wooden stake, I had to pound T-posts and rebar for both grids. So that's 60 stakes. And if you've never done that, and it's super cold, I mean, that was a humbling day. That was a humbling day. You know, I definitely invested in better gloves after that. But the cows are finally out. The grid's intact. And if they messed up the grid and I had to pay to have the surveyor or soil guy come back out, I mean, you're talking about a lot of expense. I really can't believe how expensive the surveying work was, but it's just how it goes. Okay, so we're back up on the farm road that fortunately is part of my property. And if you look up here, let's see if I can zoom. So all of that cattle stuff up here, that is what used to be down by the barn, and the cow guy moved it, and so he can load up his cattle up there. And then if you see this fence line, that's my north property line. And then Jeff owns all around that. So right through here, and I think that's a walnut, that big, huge tree right there with no leaves. I'm pretty sure that's a black walnut tree. But there's a really cool kind of hidden grove behind there that's part of my property that I'll do a video about another time. I'll just kind of do a quick pan from where I'm standing now. Forgive the wind. But yeah, that's it. You know, and the hope is to use this land to continue to grow cut flowers as part of my community service project, to do a perennial flower business. I mean, I'm still gonna have to be a lawyer for a long time, and that's okay, but you know, part of the beauty here is kind of a blank palette to do whatever I want. And those of you who know me and know my family, you know, I grew up in the greenhouse businesses and doing design work that helped put me through undergrad and law school, and just the irony that I did that to pay my tuition, and now as a lawyer I'm using that money to get back into greenhouses. It's kind of funny. But anyways, thanks for coming on this tour. I hope you continue to watch.